So far, the Sex Pistols' reputation and press coverage far exceeded sales or output. Fortunately, they had an ace up their sleeves.
It was only in '77 when it dawned on somebody about a week before the event that it was the Queen's Jubilee and the first line of the song was God Save the Queen. Aha, let's change the name of the song, you know.
Certainly something I would look back on myself, but when I hear that track, everything that was that particular period of time and was punk comes flooding back to me.
You know, I still remember to this day, you know, it's one of the most vivid moments of my entire life, and 3.5 minutes later, I was not the same human being.
I think it's like one of those moments where like society suddenly splits into two camps. You have people who just think, God, this is like terrible, these people ought to have their heads chopped off.
It wasn't just the Pistols themselves. I mean, though Johnny was razored and Paul Cook was hit with an iron bar and had to have stitches. I mean, Jimmy Lydon, Johnny's brother, lost an eye at that time. You know, he lost an eye when he was glassed in the face for wearing the wrong kind of T-shirt.
God Save the Queen stormed to the top of the charts, a position that shops and charts refused to recognise, thereby making it the first #1 record to receive little or no TV or airplay, and the band's name blanked from all top 40 rundowns.
For a start, it's #1, and let's not beat around the bush. It was #1. They pretended it was #2, but that record was flying out the shops. I mean, it wasn't Rod Stewart's. They tried to pretend it was Rod Stewart's, but when I was at school at the time, everyone bought God Save the Queen. Even people didn't like the kind of music bought it because it was naughty, and it was just a way of like sticking two things up the royal family.
The band's debut album was as controversial as their singles. Released on October 1977, Nevermind the Bollocks would turn out to be their one and only album. But what a record it was. It charted at #1 and has been selling ever since.
The ultimate Saturday night record, even on a Monday morning. It's brilliant. It's a generation gap made flesh. You know, it is the stuff of generational divides. It's fantastic. It's why people are 17-year-olds. It's so they can go out, buy Nevermind the Bollocks, upset their parents, and just sit there with a nice warm feeling. Job done.
And another thing that's really great about the album is the artwork, which is another thing you just get used to seeing all the time. But it's a really iconic piece of artwork. It's really fantastic. Jamie Reed's artwork all the way through the Pistols is really, really important, really, really brilliant. But with Nevermind the Bollocks, I think that's the peak. It's just like, it's just so brutally simple. The colours, the yellow and the pink, really brutal, day glow, simple. It's a work of genius, and you look at it, it actually looks like what the record sounds like as well. It's very garish and bold and pretty wild, isn't it? So yeah, the album comes out, flies at #1, it's one of the best-selling albums of the year.
As soon as they made an album, a conventional rock album with 12 songs on it, with all the singles on it, it just sort of seemed like they were now just a band then. And until that point, for a very strange kind of year, they've been something more. And as soon as they made a long-playing record that you could buy in Woolworths, they suddenly kind of won.
Bodies is apparently about a fan who actually sent an aborted fetus through the post to the Sex Pistols, which, you know, thanks very much, but not really what we had in mind. It's not exactly jelly beans through the post.
Bodies is a very dark, nasty song, but a very powerful piece of music. So it's not just like this kind of day glow, controversial kind of pop songs. There's a darkness about the Pistols as well, which we start to hear for the first time, Nevermind the Bollocks, and hints of what the band could have become if they managed to carry on.
Suddenly this guy was screaming his head off from the position of being an aborted fetus. This was not, you know, a fitting subject for popular music, and he does such an extraordinary. I mean, again, it's one of those records where I don't really know whether he's anti-abortion or pro-abortion. I don't really know. I only know that he's reacted to it so emotionally that he and his band have written something extraordinary about it. Bodies is the only record, I think, that challenges Holidays in the Sun for sheer ferocity.
Holidays in the Sun is this brilliant record. I mean, it starts off with that sort of jack boots kind of stomping on the floor, and then that dang coming in, and it's just like wonderful. And it's kind of quite sophisticated. Again, you know, people might write off the Pistols as being musically primitive, but I mean, that song's not. It's got these weird kind of key changes in the middle, and it all kind of raises up at the end. And the way it kind of builds up is yeah, really clever. I mean, it's just one of the great rock and roll singles of all time.
It is so hard, it is so frightening, it's so completely intense. You know, there have been records that are much more noisy that have been made since, or avant-garde or whatever. I would honestly hold that compared to Holidays in the Sun and also Bodies, those are the two most ferocious records ever made. And I'm still not entirely... I'd like to say I knew exactly what it was that Johnny Rotten was so angry about, and I'm still not sure I do with Holidays in the Sun.
So it's not saying the Berlin Wall is bad, tear it down, or there's nothing. You don't get anything like that with Lydon. You never get directly what he thinks or what he feels, but you can feel it anyway, just in the sound of his voice or what's hinted at in the lyrics. There's confusion in there. There's contradictory messages. That's what's fantastic about it. Every song's like a little argument with itself.
Well, on the surface, it's about, you know, the whole East-West Germany Berlin Wall thing, but really under the underlying theme of it is just this feeling of paranoia and claustrophobia that John Lydon was feeling himself. He couldn't go out. You know, the police didn't want to protect him. They were raiding his flat. Every time he went out, he was attacked by people. And he just felt scared and claustrophobic, and out of that came the whole feeling of this song.
Bickering within the band was reaching new levels. While Jones and Cook were content to live the life of outlaw rock stars, Rotten clashed with McLaren to such a degree that the pair rarely spoke. But Sid was the biggest liability. After hooking up with Heartbreakers groupie Nancy Spungen, a graduate of the heroin-addled New York scene, he embarked on a mission of self-destruction. He was soon addicted to heroin and making many new enemies.
The punk thing at that time, it weren't clean cut. You know, people taking speed and drinking a lot and smoking this bit of spliff. But there was never any heroin around in England until the Heartbreakers arrived.
He was already a damaged kid before he was suddenly put into the spotlight, which one suspects was never the best place for him to be. Suddenly, a girl who is obviously far more sophisticated than him, or at least more worldly, certainly not necessarily more clever, but more worldly, is like, you know, following him around like a puppy dog.
They say Sid hadn't even had sex before, which is probably not true, but he never had a proper girlfriend before, so he was hook, line and sinker. She was into her drugs. I mean, he obviously dabbled drugs, he wasn't completely naive, but when they came together, there was just like a downhill spiral.
She was his enabler, it was Nancy. All the time she was going to be his manager, and she was going to be that, and she spoke for him, and, you know, my Sid. It was very much this kind of almost mother and son relationship. It was just this vile, grotesque thing. She was whispering in his ear about he was the star of the band. She turned him against Johnny.
In January 1978, an already fragile and volatile Sex Pistols embarked on their first US tour, a journey that would take them off the beaten track and through the southern states, playing cowboy places where punk had barely permeated. It was to be a disastrous tour.
This show's called Problems for you cowboys.
At some point, a band like this is going to have to go to America. But it's pretty weird the tour they did. I mean, I think it was Malcolm's idea to go through the South, wasn't it? And the Deep South hadn't really heard of the Pistols, and it was in a very different kind of plan. I think it was the idea was go down there, cause a rumpus, and come out the other side.
You know, they were walking out and playing to people who were either absolutely 100% hostile, or had read the music press and were in a backwater and were part of that kind of whole thing of going, well, what you do is you turn up to the gig in spiky hair and you jump up and down front and you spit at them, because that's what you're supposed to do.
They went to play this place in Texas, and you know, the first thing he said was, "You fucking bunch of fucking cowboys," you know. It was something like completely not the right thing to say. But when you get to that show, when you see that show, I think while they're on stage, that there's no other intention of like taking it to them and going, right, okay, you're America then, and we know what you're all about, and this is what we're about. And you know, there's an extra sense of violence and spite coming out of them.
Loads of fantastic, iconic rock and roll shots of Sid standing on stage topless, all slashes on his chest, and it does look really cool. You know, I mean, it's horrible, but it's cool. It's like a car crash.